And good afternoon, everyone. Good to see, well, I would say smiling faces, but I can't see any faces since all the mask is covering everybody's up. But I am calling the meeting to order of the Sports Incentive Committee. The hour is at 1 o'clock, and if you wouldn't mind standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Once again, good afternoon to everyone. Randy, is there any public comments for the committee this afternoon?
Mr. Chair, no public comment at this time.
Very good, thank you. Everyone has received a copy of the January 25th SIC meeting. We've had an opportunity to review it. Can I get a motion to approve the minutes as presented?
Motion approved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and second to approve the minutes of the SIC committee January 25th. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? No opposed. Ayes have it. Thank you so very much. Okay, we're headed into the meat of the meeting. The meat of the meeting starts with the request by Arnold Palmer Invitation Funding. Presenting will be Mr. Stewart and Mr. Kamadi.
Can I take my mask off when I'm in here? Is that okay?
Yes, you can.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Chris Carmody with Gray Robinson, Robert Stewart, my colleague, partner, also with Gray Robinson. We have the honor of representing Arnold Palmer Invitational and Arnold Winnie Palmer Foundation. They would love to be here today, but if you may have noticed, they've got just a little something going on out at Bay Hill Golf Club this week, the 2021 tournament, which is why we're here today. A few years ago in 2018, we came to this committee, probably one of its first requests to request some assistance for the tournament as it enters into a new era. The tournament, Arnold Palmer Invitational, had recently within the year lost its namesake, Mr. Arnold Palmer. As has been the case in tournaments before in the PGA Tour, when the named person associated with the event had passed on, within a few years, the popularity of the tournament with the golfers and with the fans kind of waned. Mainly for the reason of you don't really have to spend money on marketing when you have someone like Mr. Palmer making a phone call to the would-be up-and-coming or the veteran golfer saying, would you play in my tournament this year? The answer was, of course, yes. He was Mr. Palmer. And so they had a great thing going, and it was a wonderful event and still is. But knowing what had happened with other tournaments, in Byron Nelson Classic in Dallas is an example where it was a top 5, by many regards, at least a top 10 tournament, and it had waned because they didn't have that star power, so to speak. We wanted to ensure that this particular tournament that benefits so greatly to our community stayed strong. So we reached out to this committee in Orange County to form a partnership, and you all, or those of you who were on the committee at the time, voted in favor of a $2 million allocation over 4 years. It was $500,000 a year to go towards marketing and programming. The programming, obviously, to enhance the event. As you've seen, if you've gone to a tournament or any kind of a sporting event in the more recent years, it's not just about the sports anymore. There's a whole lot that goes on around the event. And then, of course, marketing was, they had admitted many times when you had someone like Mr. Palmer making the phone call, you didn't have to spend a lot of money on marketing and go forward and try to attract fans because it took care of itself, and they realized they had to step up their game and reaching out to the folks outside of our market here in the 321-407. So we thank you for that. Fast forward, we've had 2 successful years under that funding agreement, and this year we were hoping this would be the 3rd of the 4 years in success. But over the summer, Robert and I, working with the tournament, we came to the realization that with the expected cap on attendance, which they're experiencing this week, they're capped at, is it 20 or 25%? 25%. It would not be the best use of the county's dollars or their dollars to put a real aggressive campaign on marketing when we can't accommodate the folks we would try to get here. And so we reached out to county staff. As a reminder, this contract, because it was one of the early ones, is still a county contract as opposed to a Visit Orlando specific contract. So we reached out to them and got the county's blessing. They said, per the contract, we need to go through the SIC to reach approval for that. And so here we are today. We're asking to extend the contract by a year and take the $500,000 that we would have otherwise spent this year on marketing, which would have not been a good use of those funds and to be good stewards of your dollars, and push it out to the out year. So next year in 2022 would be the normal fourth year, would become the third, and then the fourth year would be 2023, so that we can bring back this tournament even greater than it was before and make good use of the funds provided by the county. I have good news to share, though. The sales for the limited number of tickets has been extremely strong this year. Some of the things, the benefits of that funding from the county, one thing I can note is the PGA took notice. They saw the partnership here from the county, and when they rearranged their schedule, they made sure that API was in a plum spot on the schedule right before the Players' Championship, which is next week in Jacksonville, which would obviously draw in better golfers. And this week is no different. You have Jordan Spieth, you have Rory McIlroy, you have some of the bigger names on tour that, not that they don't love the event and love our organization, but they make strategic decisions, obviously, in where they go. And putting us right next to TPC was the PGA's way of saying, thank you for your investment from the county and from this organization. We're going to reward the tournaments that are doing the right things with their events. So it's been a good partnership, and we're looking forward to continuing that. And I can answer any questions or stop and put back on my mask.
Any questions for the committee? Were you also going to make a presentation?
Oh, Chris, this is Robert Stewart with Gray Robinson. Chris covered all the things that I was going to cover. I was only going to point out in your packet, you've got kind of the formal letter under the terms of our contract. If modifications were to be made, it was asked to go through a formal request to the county administrator. That then began the conversation that Chris mentioned we've been having with county staff for several months, which leads us to today. So we would love and be grateful for your support of rolling this 2021 money into 2023. And again, it is the same amount of funding, no difference in the total amount, only modifying the contract by one additional year since we're not using it this year.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
You mentioned 25%. What number does that represent as far as bodies are concerned?
It's my understanding that in a normal year, over the course of the 4 days, they can have about 50,000 patrons out there. So when you put that out over a day, that's about 12.5 a day that they expect. Some of those are repeats, and some of those are individuals. And I think on capacity, they can go higher, but that's what we're looking at about 25% of that 50,000 number, spread across 4 days. So if you haven't gotten tickets yet, not to promote it, it's going to be a great time to go to a tournament because it's going to be not many people out there. You'll have plenty of space to spread out. Or if you got young ones like me, they can not get in trouble because there's not as many people there.
Okay. So we've heard the report requesting for deferring the $500,000 to 2023. Is there a motion for that?
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve deferring the Arnold Palmer contribution by the SIC to 2023. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. There's motion been made and second. Any other discussion? Okay. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One moment.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chitwood, who would have loved to have been here if not for the tournament, he did offer, and I hope we can set it up later this year, to come and give a post-tournament report, even though there was no funding this year. He's enjoyed that. He's really enjoyed the partnership with Visit Orlando, and so has the whole group, as we've been able to partner in better understanding how we can leverage those marketing dollars. So at one of your meetings, not this week, when they have a tournament, we'll be, if we're invited, we'll come back and give a full report of how we did on attendance, how we did on programming and all that, so we can better plan for next year.
We would love that. I know I would. Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Okay, moving on to Cure Bowl. Mr. Cronk.
Yes, good afternoon. And I'm going to present a request to amend the Cure Bowl arrangement. Just quick history, back in July of last year, the Cure Bowl came and presented an application for funding for an annual College Bowl game. It's held in December. And they were approved. They were approved for $137.5 for a 3-year period of 2020, 21, and 22. So last December, as the impact of the pandemic became clear that there would be no way of getting around it for the bowl games, the Cure Bowl and ESPN approached Visit Orlando and wanted to be sure that the county and us felt like the investment was generating value for us. So ESPN, which had acquired the Cure Bowl, previously it had aired on CBS Sports Network, and so for 2020 it was moving to ESPN, which was part of the reason that we approved the funding, was excited about the greater coverage ESPN would allow for the game. So ESPN offered, as a way to kind of add value to the agreement, they offered to provide Visit Orlando with the advertising assets that we see here, 3 30-second TV spots, 2 TV billboards with our logo, and then a sponsored TV feature. And so it was all very last minute in early December for the December bowl game. We reached out to the county. They were fine with it. So ESPN did. They provided these assets to us. I can say that of the 9 group of 5, so in college football, there's the power conferences and then what they call the group of 5. Of the 9 group of 5 bowl games that aired on ESPN and ABC, the Cure Bowl had the highest ratings of any of the 9, drew in over 2.5 million households. They have now come back and offered to extend that arrangement for 21 and 22. They're not seeking any additional funding. They just would like to offer those same assets to us for each of the next 2 years. So if approved and if agreed upon, then we will amend the contract to formally make these ESPN advertising assets part of the funding agreement. And then just to give you a little idea, in addition to the 3 30-second spots, here's some examples of how the Visit Orlando logo did appear during the game. So, for example, the college football look-ahead brought to you by Visit Orlando. And then going in or out of commercial break, the Visit Orlando website, web address was superimposed over some really nice visuals of Orlando. So it was good exposure for the destination. And if approved, we would have the same opportunity for each of the next 2 years.
Any questions? Yes.
Daryl, you said it was the highest viewership. Is it, we know the reason why it's the highest viewership? Is it something to do with who played, or?
Part of it was who played, and part of it was the date. So it aired on December 26th. So after Christmas tends to draw higher ratings. And then, yeah, it was, I looked before I came, I blinked. It was one of Coastal Carolina, I believe, which was a surprising team last fall that came in, I believe, undefeated or maybe only 1 loss.
Right.
And that drew some extra attention to the game.
Thank you.
Very good bowl game. Question for you. It mentions 2 billboards. Any idea, where are the billboards going to be located?
They were TV billboards. So like here, our web address was a billboard superimposed onto the visuals of Orlando. So they weren't actual physical billboards like on a highway or something.
Oh, okay. Interesting. Any other? Mark? Any other? No, good. Okay, you've heard the presentation. Is there a motion to approve the presentation as presented?
Motion to approve.
There's a second?
Second.
Okay, motion's made and second to approve the presentation, to include the ESPN advertising.
Great.
All those in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries.
Thank
Good
you.
job. Go ESPN. I like that. All right, thank you. Moving along, the Florida Cup. Oh, before moving to the Florida Cup, I just wanted to remind the committee that the presentation on the World Team Tennis session has been eliminated from the agenda, so they're not going to be making a presentation. So with the Florida Cup, Mr. Steve and Darrell. Good to see you.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Good to see you. Committee members, appreciate the opportunity very much. It's nice to be just talking about potentially doing sports and entertainment business in general. And all of us, to some degree, as different as it may be, being here together gives some comfort, I should say. And we're excited about it. Just having come through the bowl games ourselves, it was a rocky ride, but we were able to put on the Verbo Citrus Bowl, which we were blessed. It's a bit of a disappointment that it's our 75th year in the postseason in this community to do it during a pandemic, but we did. And we'll celebrate that 75th year a little bit more, I think, here in our journey to 76. Of course, the Cheez-It Bowl is another great addition as well. But we survived them and did them, and we're proud of that. I want to thank all of you so much for also the past partnerships and some of the past successes that we've had. Of course, worked together on the NFL Pro Bowl. We worked together on the Florida Blue Florida Classic, which unfortunately we were not able to play last season, but we're excited now about launching into 2021. And both of our partners, Florida A&M and Bethune-Cookman, have joined the SWAC, and we expect that to be a robust venture back into 2021. You helped us with that event, appreciate that. That's 27 years in town. And of course, many college football kickoff games that we've partnered on together. So thank you for your partnership in the past and for having me here today. Florida Citrus Sports, quickly, for those of you who do not know, we're a not-for-profit event management company. Clearly, the college football postseason is our primary business, but we act essentially as a tenant of the cities at Camping World Stadium. But for an NFL team, you got a not-for-profit tenant who tries as best we can to pitch for the venue and invest our own resources and take risk and make events happen. But we very much compete shoulder to shoulder with the Buccaneers and the Dolphins and the Cowboys and the Falcons, and can assure you they're a little bit more well-resourced. But we're an impact company. Our job is heads and beds, turning on TV sets. That's why we exist. In the end, we steer our resources at endeavors in a socioeconomic platform like you've learned through Lift Orlando, which was an innovation of Florida Citrus Sports Board in partnership now that's 7 years in, $100 million invested in the West downtown neighborhood, so we're proud of that. We've got a little bit of a soccer history. When I first started in 1995, I'm embarrassed to say I'm that old now, but one of my first ventures was in 96 with the Olympic Games. My boss asked me to build an athlete village, which I had no clue how to do, but we did it anyway out at UCF and used one of their brand new dorms that was not occupied yet, and we made it happen. But we had 9 Olympic Games here in soccer in then the Florida Citrus Bowl Stadium, now Camping World Stadium, and done a number of friendlies. Mia Hamm broke the international scoring record in one of our friendlies here, and then, of course, we did an ICC International Champions Cup match with Paris Saint-Germain and Tottenham Hotspur a number of years ago. That's an event owned, and I think it's important for today's subject, by Stephen Ross and Relevant Sports, the Dolphins, Hard Rock Stadium. That's their event, and they do those matches all over the country. We're here today because, one, I think we've hungered to add major international club soccer to Orlando's calendar. And it's been very difficult, other than getting one scrap, kind of a C-level game back in 2016 from the ICC. And if we were them, we'd not be incented in any way to put an A-level match or even a B-level match in Orlando. We want Orlando residents and people north of Florida into Georgia and South Carolina to come to Miami, right? That's their mission, is to get them to come to Miami and Hard Rock Stadium and see the big matches. So they put those other matches in other destinations around America that aren't competitive with Miami. So I don't fault them for that. We would all do the same thing. We want the visitation to be here as well. So that's prevented us from gaining access to those level events. And we'll show you kind of the value of those events in the balance of this presentation. So Florida Citrus Sports has looked at that and said, I guess we're going to have to go it alone. And whenever you can, you want to have tentpole events that you can create in this marketplace. You just did one with Bay Hill. Obviously, our bowl games, 75, 76 years, they don't use an investment from the Sports Incentive Committee. We're proud of that, but they're here now. They're ours. We're not having to fight everybody else in America to have that $100 million in economic impact come here anymore with our 2 bowl games. So we'd love to start one and have one that we don't have to beat everybody else out of every single year and consistently be vetted against other markets and ginning up how much we have to invest in it. So anyway, to do that, you have 2 choices. You start from scratch and build a brand that's going to take a number of years for corporate partners and others to sign on to, or potentially you look at something that's done very well and existed here in this market, in this case, the Florida Cup, which our partner, Ricardo Villar, has done an amazing job with our partners over the last 6 years building, paying their dues, delivering an event that I think you're going to see and that you have invested in recent years, building it into a powerhouse of brand value, international brand value, tens of millions of dollars of brand value for this destination, and pretty solid visitation with lower-level clubs in January. South American clubs, really clubs from the America, done an amazing job over the last number of years, but 40,000 attendees, $20 million in economic impact, that's not nothing, and we're very proud of them. So you look at that and say, is there a way that maybe we could acquire the Florida Cup and all of that history and all of that development, all that international brand recognition, and get there quicker? So we were able to come to an agreement to acquire the rights to the Florida Cup. Ricardo now resides in our office, and you can bring the power, hopefully, of Florida Citrus Sports, this organization, and our resources and our risk-taking posture to this endeavor and benefit from the brand value the Florida Cup already has. So that was a decision we made, and that's why we're here today. I'm here to say, and I'm going to bring Ricardo up because I know you all know about the Florida Cup, and he's going to go quickly through a number of slides here just looking at 2020. We're not going to dwell on any of them. We're going to leave enough time, hopefully, for you to ask the questions that you want to ask. But we're proud of what it's become, and he'll recap that briefly. You know, major sponsors like Universal Studios, Lennar Homes, Adidas, they don't sign on to an event if it doesn't have any return. And I think that's endorsement enough that their money resides in an event that's delivering. And we're proud of that. So, Ricardo, I'm going to ask you to take them through a little bit of a recap from 2020, and then I'll take back over and we'll close the show here. So you just press that and it'll advance.
Thank you, Steve. First of all, it's an honor being here. Thank you guys for the support over the past years, and especially Jason, Brent, all the support you've given us to this point. So I'll quickly go through it because you guys seen it. You've seen the recap 2020 that we already made. But I think the important thing conceptually, you know, it's a global event connecting, you know, sports and music, the passion that it brings with the main international destination being Orlando. And also entertainment. So quickly, attendance growing. You talked about economic impact the past 2 years over the, you know, around that 20 million range for this area. You see a good division between people coming from out of states and international, along with the domestic appeal that continues to grow. How that's done, we obviously pride ourselves on separating and really organizing our marketing material and our platform. And that being said, broadcast, I mean, huge numbers that we're able to get over the last 6 years, a lot of open-to-air TV live matches in South America. South America does carry today the biggest audience. You're talking 5 million, for example, TV audience in Brazil alone. And we've seen something important there that, let alone you see the 89 million return for the brands on the regular media piece, but that there's an appeal internationally for matches happening with the European teams. You see the Champions League there, right below Florida Cup, before their own matches internally in their league. So that's one piece that was important. Social media impact, I mean, 370 million impressions in an event like this is something we're proud of. It's important to note as well that the addition of the Ivete Sangalo singer, the Fan Fest, really, the music, has given us a demographic of women over male there, talking female 70%, 30, which is the opposite in soccer. So that was good. Key destination markets, obviously being involved, and the engagement value of 70 million plus 18 million. That's in addition to the media value that you saw on the last slide. So this is something important to share. And this is not counting what all the influencers bring to the table, because Ibope Rivercon still doesn't count their stories. But if you look at their stories alone, they're a channel of their own. And part of our strategy is bringing them in together and aligning them with what the goals are. So whether they're in Universal Orlando Resort or Lennar as a partner or Adidas, or doing the things and consuming always Orlando in the bus, top of mind, year-round through this platform. So here are just some ideas. 40 million followers of Bruna Marquezine. These pictures are from the January event, which we're lucky to get done right before COVID hit. Then going to venues now, Idea Orlando, we have multiple venues, and other than multiple venues, just as you know, the stadiums, we got a multitude of events that happen in different areas. For example, Universal Orlando Resort hosting the Fan Fest. And I'll go quickly through it. The Legends match, which alone this on digital live was over 500,000 views, and there were 2 days, and in each day we hit those numbers because of the YouTubers that we bring from America, from Brazil, reaching that demographic of, the teenagers group. So you see the youth part that we've been doing, international event, combined 2 hours. You see here the foot golf Elenar, you see Kaká getting the medal, Rivaldo, World Cup champions, some girls that are big influencers in Brazil, and then obviously bringing the world to talk about the World Cup that's coming in 2026. Big players in the market, the head of commercial in Brazil, CBF here in this picture. You see Van der Sar from the UEFA, obviously CEO of Ajax, Jason, and bringing back to what this opportunity could now become that excites us to be with Florida Citrus Sports. And back to Steve. Thank you.
Thank you, Ricardo. And Ricardo's being humble. And I also want to acknowledge and thank Jason as well. His leadership on World Cup for this community in partnership with Orlando City. I think events like this and the international matches we're doing only demonstrate together, the aggregation of these events demonstrate why Orlando should be on the list of host cities. Because we can deliver and there's an appetite for international soccer in this market. So I want to thank Jason for his support of this event also in the past. And Ricardo brushed over it, but there's power when you think about the athletes, the celebrities, the social influencers. When you allow an event like this to occur, and the absolute commitment and promise is Visit Orlando will be given assets throughout this entire enterprise to deliver the message. They can do it best. We're going to need to give them assets, not differently than what you saw in one of the broadcasts for a bowl game. We'll give them a slate of assets as part of this and let them market the destination. But the power, the reason that they're getting hundreds of millions of dollars of value is because of those third-party endorsers of the assets Orlando has. So we're excited about what that means. So imagine taking this already successful event and putting it on steroids, so to speak, really lighting it up. And what lights it up? You look at the highest rated, most frenetic viewership for soccer in Brazil, as an example by itself. It's European soccer competitions, because some of the biggest stars from Brazil play on some of the biggest brands in the world, which are in the European club teams, Real Madrid, FC Barcelona, right, Manchester United, so forth and so on. The ratings in Brazil are off the charts for that because of the consumption. So imagine, if you will, being able to bring those brands in to compete against teams from the Americas, and that's what we're talking about here. And I mentioned Stephen Ross and the ICC. You're talking about a well-established event that had been bringing a dozen teams in from Europe, paying them $2 million per match, 3 matches guaranteed, $6 million to come to North America. That's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money. And so if you think about the risk we're going to have to take to acquire a top 12 team in the world to come here and be a part of this, or even a top 20 to go with that top 12 team to then play 2 teams from the Americas, it's going to be expensive. That's who we're competing against. But I look at COVID as an opportunity because the market's in disarray. The ICC, if you followed it, realized they overpaid and lost a lot of money because of the sheer amount of teams. So now they've whittled that down. They're going to go to probably 4 to 6 teams in market instead of a dozen teams in market. Creates an opportunity for other power brands in Europe to come to Orlando. And I think COVID also creates an opportunity to get into this business without paying pre-COVID prices. And that's what we're really here talking about today, and I can't stress that enough. When you look at ICC matches, for example, there's one of them. Now, why Michigan Stadium? Because Stephen Ross went to Michigan. Probably has a passion. They have 110,000 seats, and they filled every last one of them. That is impressive, right? But you're looking at probably $6 million worth of team fees right there, okay? And that's scary. We're not going to be at that level, obviously, but I can assure you we can't do this without your help. So when you say, how are we going to do it? Who are we targeting? Again, 4 clubs, 4 matches. 2 now, what you've known about the Florida Cup is 4 teams, usually from the Americas, sometimes an MLS team, but we've reached out into Bundesliga before and had some lower level, not top 50 probably even, below the top 50 of European clubs have played in it, Schalke, some others, but we're talking about elevating that now to top 12, team 2, maybe top 20, right? So, and I think absolutely what we're asking you for today is going to be contingent upon filling that field and contingent upon meeting those metrics. We can agree on those metrics, but the point is we're going to strive for that level quality coming here to join those teams from the Americans. Moving to the summer, late July right now is the target, 23 through 31st of July. And again, we're committed to that level of teams that we're going to play. And you look at El Clasico and Hard Rock Stadium last year, which, you know, congrats to Hard Rock, congrats to Stephen Ross, congrats to what they've built over the years, especially their focus on La Liga. But these are two of the biggest brands in the world. They get paid $6 million roughly each to compete in a single match like this. $12 million in match fees to deliver that kind of attendance. Now, this is one match. Estimates have been $50 to $100 million in economic impact. Others have estimated that you could have upwards of $50 million in economic impact for the right kind of full stadium single match. What I'm proud of and what we're focused on here is 4 matches, a week worth of events. We can meet and exceed those kind of numbers, and I think with less. And that's our focus right now. You look at a week schedule and a sample schedule. I won't bore you with that right now, but there's a lot going on, and that's what's going to deliver the visitation and the brand value. And as we close, I would tell you, I am well aware that we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm well aware that, pray God, we see a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel, and 21 is going to be a better opportunity for us. As I've said, I think that's an opportunity, not a deficit right now. We couldn't afford to have this conversation before COVID hit. Okay, so I think we got to seize while we can to enter this space and see if this Orlando destination can deliver on major international club soccer. COVID is going to be a challenge on the attendance, but I think if we were looking at a single day match, like you just saw, 60,000 people, we would be defining this as a signature event. The marketing and brand value's there, without question. It'll be exponentially greater than what it's already been. But we're going to have to deliver that likely in a COVID environment over multiple matches over a full week, okay? Because we're not going to be there yet. I'm as real as you are. Hopefully we can hit 50, 60% by the time we get to late July. We're going to need to, right? Because we're hanging ourselves out in the wind, I can assure you, in order to do this. Our organization may well get stung for $1 million loss on this venture. But our board sat there and looked at that and said, we've got to go give this a shot. We've got to get into the business while the getting's good. So I full well recognize that COVID's a challenge. We would normally be here, standing here saying we got to put 55,000 plus people in Camping World for our signature match. And if COVID prevents us from doing that, I think we're going to meet those metrics over 4 matches and over a week-long set of events. So that's how we've built our ask for you. Again, now's the buying opportunity. And I'll close by saying, you know, our ask is for $750,000 in support. A typical kickoff game would have payouts that approach these fees. 100% of those fees, by the way, are going to pay a fraction of what we're going to have to guarantee European teams to come here, okay? A fraction. It's not going to anything else but helping reduce that pain point of paying the European teams. It's still going to be 7 figures, multiple 7 figures for each of those 2 teams, much less quality teams from the Americas, right? I'm not discounting them, but the big fees are going to be with the European teams. We've created a structure in our ask that if we hit certain sales metrics and some of the revenues there, we'll return up to $250,000 of that risk you're taking with us and settle in at $500,000. So in a sense, we're asking for a little bit of a hedge or a backstop on $250,000 of this. If we're successful and the money's there, we're not going to keep that. We're giving that back, and you know, $500,000 I think would be welcomed at that point. So again, we'll condition that on the teams. We'll condition that on filling out the field. We'll condition that on providing the right assets to Visit Orlando to be able to market the destination in this event. And I'd ask you to help us seize this opportunity while the getting's good for Orlando to get into the major international club soccer business. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Questions? This is a big.
I have a couple of questions. So obviously it's moving to Camping World from Exploria Stadium next in 2021.
Yeah,
Let's keep it
moving from Orlando City, Exploria. You could consider if we break up 4 matches, 4 individual matches, or 2 and then a double header, or 3 and a single match. Camping World's going to be needed. The only reason we're doing this is get that kind of visitation driven. So yes.
So and the report indicates that there was 40,000 in combined attendance last year. Do you expect to be able to be at full capacity in July and August? Because to hit that number, we're in the regular, right? If we're using the metrics from last year,
Sure.
we are in the regular versus the signature. And in prior applications, we've always kind of looked at what did the prior year support. And even if we were at reduced capacity, being in Camping World would allow us to have more spectators. I'm just not sure how we're going to get, or how, if we are at reduced capacity, how are we even going to get close over the 50,000 number? That's.
Yeah, I'm confident we're going to get over the 50,000 number because of the aggregation of matches, right? So you have 4 matches. I'm confident in the future, we're going to be at that with one single-day event in Camping World Stadium, COVID aside, right? As we go into 22. But I think we'll hit those numbers over the week. We're going to do significantly better than a pre-COVID event of 40,000 in a COVID environment. I'm confident in that. So, but that's going to have to happen over the week of events in a COVID year. Do I think the governmental regulations would allow us to have 100% capacity? Potentially so, yes. Do I think human consumption is going to be there in that environment? No. And we've all seen that. You're in the business. We just did 2 bowl games. And before that, in December, by the way, we did a 4,500-person cheer event in the convention center in some of the worst environment you could possibly do it. So I feel your question and respect it. But I would tell you that we believe consumption for this event, even in a COVID environment, will eclipse that number. In a normal year, we got to blow that number away. Okay, does that make sense? I mean, if 50,000 is the signature event level, I believe we're going to blow past that this year in a COVID environment.
And so the difference between last year and this year is using the bid money in order to lure bigger names, international teams?
Excuse me?
So the difference between the attendance from last year to this year, or why it would be different, is because we're using the additional funds that you're asking to try and lure bigger international teams.
1,000%.
That's what the purposes of the money is.
1,000%. You're talking about clubs, when you talk top 12, that start to approach 100 million worldwide fans, right? These are, it's a whole other league. And this is, again, not to disparage our partners in Brazil and Argentina and even Mexico. Club America, by the way, is one of the unique examples out of Liga MX in Mexico that is a top 15 club in the world. But, River Plate and some of the teams that we've had, Boca Juniors, I mean, these are major clubs. But to get 2 Euros that we're talking about at the level, top 20 brands in the world, it's night and day. And the fees go from hundreds of thousands of dollars to millions of dollars. So, and that's an example of saying, if you're going to bring the Cowboys to Europe to play a game versus bringing, the Spring League professional football team to Europe, Europeans want to see the Cowboys play. Okay, here domestically, when you talk about the normal domestic channels of travel to Orlando, Eastern Seaboard, east of the Mississippi, all those drives, so take international out of it for a minute. All those fans that don't get to see these brands play in the States that already love coming to Orlando are coming to Orlando to see this happen because they can't see it otherwise, right? You're bringing the Cowboys to Europe. In that case, you're bringing, I'm hasten using a name because you'll hold me to it, but I could give you 10 names, insert here, and that's the comparable difference, okay? So it's.
And the funding is based on whether or not that type of team would come?
That's correct. This ask is conditioned upon those metrics. We would not
I'm a
ask
huge
you-
soccer fan, so
Yeah.
I would love to see these teams
Yeah.
come. It's COVID.
No doubt, no doubt. And that's one of the reasons they're willing to listen to us right now, by the way. These huge Euros we're talking about, top 10, top 12 in the world, are talking because it's COVID. They recognize they need to be in the States. You look at Bundesliga, just did a major deal with ESPN. These people are invested in North America and the United States in particular. They want to be here. Our destination gives them that training environment and the consistency in a market that they know their fans back home, England, Brazil, already want to come, Orlando. And I think we're trying to seize on that right now while we can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. I'm a big fan. You got to be in it to win it type of philosophy, so I like your passion behind that. And thank you for answering that question. I assume they are at the edge of their seats. We're talking, this is 4 months away.
Let's just say we've been deep in conversation with a number of top 12 teams in the world. There is interest. Some of the numbers we presented, I should say they haven't jumped on yet, but are open to. We're close. I'm confident we'll get the teams. We aren't starting after this meeting. We're well into it. So I feel really good where we are. Whether we can afford it for what I've projected in our P&L, Steve's going to be in trouble with his board, right? That's not your problem, but I think, I feel good about what we're going to be able to put together here. There's a real hunger to buy into this. It's just whether we can afford it.
Hey, Steve.
Hey, Don?
Normally, I think something like this, you'd expect to get, when you have these international teams coming in, you'd expect to get a large contingent of international travelers that would help to, support something like this. It's a big ask. So maybe this is more of a Darrell question, but I have a hard time seeing that we're going to get any international travel this early. And so I don't know how we get the support from a room nights perspective from any kind of an international. I'm wondering if the dates are, movable.
Yeah, well, the dates are really kind of built for the European teams, okay? That's the opportunity. That's when they're in the United States. That's the time we're going to have to play. So that's one. Two, I think it's a very fair question, Don, and the way I would view an event like this, much like our major American events, Pro Bowl, college football kickoff games, you name it, the real strong visitation comes from the drive market and beyond, right? You're trying to get people that normally would come try and make or justify a 3-day trip to Orlando where they already want to go. You're going to want them to come down and bundle that with something they're dying to see, whether it was Miami playing Florida or Bama playing Louisville. We were trying to draw people that would always, Eastern Seaboard, Southeast United States, even sometimes in one of the better markets for Orlando is Tampa, which I was shocked to find out. Tampa residents that make 3-day weekends in Orlando, it's one of the better drive markets for Orlando. So what you see in an event like this one's blessed to have some international attraction, where maybe Bama Louisville doesn't. This one's blessed to have it, but it's not going to lean on the international visitation. That will come when it's ready. The big pot pie is the domestic travel to see these big brands. The domestic travel from so far and wide wouldn't necessarily come to see maybe some of the club teams that you would traditionally have in the Florida Cup, fair. But when you add the Euros, that's what we're doing here, and that's really unlocking the domestic audience. That's who I'm counting on. I would call the international market lagniappe as that opens over the next several years.
And to follow up with Don's question, last year, a lot of the room nights were basically geared towards the Brazilian contingency, right? The tours and stuff that came from Brazil. And so you would expect to replace and increase those numbers with local? Or
No.
not local, but
No doubt, but I think Ricardo would tell you as well, when you look at the data, there are a ton of Brazilians living in America. And we're bringing the Brazilians that live in America to Orlando. Yes, we have, again, it's blessed to have an audience coming from the international market, but it in no way is living on the international market right now. It's living on the domestic market of Brazilian fans that are traveling and staying multiple nights. They just don't live in Orlando. They might be coming from Miami, staying 3 days. They might be coming from anywhere in the southeastern United States. That's who we have to live in. I think you all have seen that in your own businesses, that it's really the passion we're drawing on the United States audience from Brazil or anywhere in South America or Mexico or Europe to come down and see this. And by the way, I think the American fans don't get excited, as I've said multiple times, until you add a brand like these big top 12 European brands. That's when you get them to say, okay, I got to take my kid. Because in some of these clubs, if you look at them, you'll see there's 50, 60, 80 supporters clubs in cities all over the Eastern Seaboard for that European club. So I think that's what you'll see. Does that answer your question? I mean,
Yes, thank you.
Not poo-pooing the international travel for the previous Florida Cups, but it wasn't living on just the internet. It was living on the domestic Brazilians choosing to come to Orlando that weekend because their favorite teams were here.
Maybe just a comment to make sure I understand what you're telling me, but I attended a Mexico-Costa Rica friendly at Camping World Stadium.
Absolutely.
And I was one of the few people in that stadium that wasn't either from Mexico or Costa Rica, but all the people I talked to live here.
Yeah.
That's kind of what you're saying, that's going to be the draw?
Yeah, no doubt. They live in the United States somewhere. It may not necessarily, there was 55,000 people at that event. It was a great event. But they're coming from the Southeast. There's only so many times, especially if, for instance, they live in Texas and they weren't playing in Houston that year, the national team, and they're playing in Florida. They're going to go pick one of those destinations, get to it, and see their team play. So, the Mexican population in Orlando or Central Florida would not put 55,000 people in Camping World Stadium. So I think you're exactly right. It's the domestic energy that you get from the Mexican fan to come to Orlando.
It's an amazing amount of energy. The only problem is when Mexico scores, they all throw their beer.
Yeah.
Well, you get ejected for that now.
And then,
Lifetime ban.
at what point, though, you talked about some contingencies here. At what point would you say, uh-oh, we're not going to be there?
Yeah, I
Would
was
that be
gonna
2
ask,
months
what's
from
the
now?
go,
Would that
no-go?
be?
Yeah, we're going to have our European teams booked by the end of this month. You know, maybe early April, mid-April. We're going. We're doing this. We're going to make it happen either way. I'm confident in that. The uh-oh thing is I think about it every night, trust me, because I got to face my board later that I convinced them to take this kind of risk. But we got to have our teams booked by mid-April.
And if you said this already, Steve, I apologize, but at what point will you determine what you're going to try to sell out Camden Stadium for? I know what you're trying to get to for the 4 days, but again, part of that's contingent on where we are with COVID and what human comfort people are feeling around. Is it 25%? Is it 50%? Do you know what your target is, or at what
Right now,
point?
50%.
It is 50%, okay, and can only potentially go up.
Yeah, we're
Okay.
praying it's well beyond that.
Thanks.
But we're trying to be as cautious as we can.
Yeah.
Thank you for the question, because
Yeah.
again, if it were a single day ask of you, we'd
Understand.
still probably be in this ballpark of
Yeah.
ask, but it's,
Yeah, thank you for
Yep.
clarifying.
Any other questions? Steve, quick question for you. Contingency target line, you're saying is contingent upon, obviously, one, getting the teams by April. What other commitments by what other periods of time is your contingency timeline?
absolutely, Mr. Chair, the investment will be absolutely contingent on getting a top 12 European club in this match. And the second team being minimum of a top 20 world brand in the world. So both the Euros are going to be in the top 20. One of them must be in the top 12. We don't hit that, then we're going to have to come back and talk. But that's the commitment. If we don't get that, obviously, I can't expect this investment. So that's our commitment to you. There are already sales revenue targets on manifested ticket sales that I will have to provide to you as follow-up. Hopefully, we're going to hit some of those triggers, and I'm going to give you $250,000 of this back. But those are the metrics. And then we'll absolutely provide you as a follow-up a roster of negotiated assets to give to you, Visit Orlando, whoever you and/or the county deem to use those assets to brand the destination, we're going to provide as well. So we'll get a exhibit together to give you as broadcast exposure, digital field signage boards, so forth and so on, posts by celebrities and athletes. We're going to give a roster of those things to the destination to manage. So those are the things I think that we'll put in black and white and ink with you.
Randy, question for you. I mean, this is a large dollar amount from the budget of 1.3 million or so. Does that create a problem for us, although we're getting 500 back from Arnold Palmer? Yes
Mr.
or
Chair,
no?
good question. As far as the funding status is, to consider the request today, we're starting at $1.97 million.
1.9, okay.
This is at 750. That'll take it down to about $1.2 million if it's approved.
Okay,
So yes, there is funding available.
great. Thank you. Thank you. Okay, any other?
One more
yes,
question.
yes.
You mentioned that you were going to go forward with this and try to lock down some of these teams. Is it feasible to think about doing that and then coming back to us and sharing more details in terms of what you've got information-wise?
I'm happy to do that. Don, technically, it'd be a lot easier for us to have serious conversations with these clubs, understanding what the risk we've already taken is. And so it'd be hard to go, hold on what we just discussed, give me whatever period of time, get this solidified, come back to you and tell you that's good, if that makes sense. We're in real time having financial negotiations with all these clubs. And so I absolutely want to come back and do that as soon as we have them, but I would hate to make the ask. I'd rather make the ask contingent on meeting the metric and come back and update you as we go through every step of the process. So if that makes sense. I mean, we could live with it if we had to, but we're going to have to make offers in a week or two, probably, and contingent on this.
Any other questions? Okay, we have the presentation on the Florida Cup for 750. Oh, I'm sorry. Daryl, that's right. Thank you.
Good
Sorry,
afternoon.
Daryl. I was getting excited. and moving
It
too
is,
fast.
it is very exciting. It is, and Steve did a good job presenting it. It's a great opportunity. As you'll see in a moment, I'll run through my comments. It is a big risk versus big reward, or the comment about you got to go big sometimes. So Steve got to really focus more on the reward side. I have the less fun task of focusing a little more on some of the risk, and then we just decide where it plays out. But to the earlier question about funding, I'd anticipated that, so I did have a slide prepared. As Randy said, we currently have over 1.9 million, almost 2 million, available in the fund. So coming before the committee today is this event plus one more. Even if both events are approved, we would still have over 1.1 million available. So the short answer is yes, the funding is available for both the requests coming before your committee today. So then we'll move on to Florida Cup. So just the quick overview, as laid out in the application for this event, the funding was requested 50% by the end of May and then 50% in mid-July. And as Steve said, it's to offset just a portion, not even all of it, but a portion of the appearance and bid fees for these top-level teams. The event date's in July, so if you're familiar with the previous Florida Cup, that was in January. From a tourism point of view, candidly, January is a little better timing because occupancy levels tend to be lower in January than July. But given the pandemic environment and the occupancy levels we're currently at, we don't anticipate there being any issue with overcrowding this summer in our hotels. So timing is not really a concern. It would move, as acknowledged, from Exploria to Camping World Stadium. Roughly same format, 4 matches previously, so still looking at 4 matches, but it would be at Camping World, which does open up greater capacity opportunity. Clubs and schedules still to be determined at this point. So it's the claimed impacts. This would fall under what, according to the SIC guidelines, would be a signature event. So the $750,000 request. It does meet the minimum requirements for both attendance and room nights. It comes up a little low on economic impact. Having run it through a few of our impact models, I think Steve is being conservative, so I'm not overly worried about the economic impact threshold there at 50 million. If the attendance and room nights are met, I think economic impact would fall out just fine. The comparison to prior year that was mentioned earlier, so I had kind of the same idea. And so here's 2020, 40,000, roughly 22,000 room nights. That is the summed attendance across all 4 games, so over the course of the activity. And since the number of games is staying the same, the growth in attendance does hinge upon the teams that they're bringing in. So the whole idea of the additional attendance and the additional room nights is that these higher level teams will draw more attendance to the event. As far as the origin, so there's the pie chart that's provided by Florida Cup for the 2020 event. So roughly 50% of the attendance was from within Central Florida. The question about international was a good one. So almost a quarter of the attendance at the 2020 Florida Cup was from international or outside the U.S. I will say that the January timing of the previous Florida Cup did coincide well with peak season for Brazilian travelers. So because the Southern Hemisphere, their peak season tends to be December, January versus our summer travel season. So the fact that the Florida Cup was drawing some of the South American or perhaps Brazilian team did play well into the Brazilian audience that was coming during their peak season in January. As far as the marketing and promotion, in previous years, the domestic coverage has been fairly minimal. It was really all about the international market. As you can see, the 2019 data, which I happen to have the broadcast data from when they came for their 2020 application. So roughly 150,000 households across U.S. and Canada. So not a lot of domestic reach, but as Steve shared in his presentation, fairly heavy international coverage, particularly in Brazil, which is a key market for Orlando as far as travel. The increase into Europe would hinge again on what team is coming. For Orlando, as far as our tourism, the United Kingdom is our #1 overseas market. So in a ideal situation, a team like Manchester United could potentially generate tremendous coverage of Orlando in the UK for followers of that team. Of course, that hinges again back on which team. I will say the international coverage is appealing in this current environment due to the impact of pandemic on travel and tourist element tax collections. We are not at a point of doing very much, if any, international advertising at this point. So greater international coverage of these teams does represent an opportunity for the tourism industry. But again, so much will hinge upon which teams do get selected for the event. So just to wrap up, attendance and room nights do meet the criteria for a signature event. Economic impact is a little low, but again, I'm not overly concerned by that. The broadcast coverage domestically has traditionally been minimal. Higher profile teams could change that, but really the focus has been on the international coverage. And really it hinges on, the risk is inherent on which teams, and we just don't know that at this time. Again, my scenario of a team like Man U would be tremendous, given UK being a large market for us. And then the impact of coronavirus and the reference to international travel. Will it be available? What kind of quarantine requirements might still be in place? A lot of unknowns, and that really is where the risk lies right now. Is there's just tremendous opportunity, as was outlined, but there's some risk inherent in these significant unknowns at this point. So happy to take any questions at this time.
Questions?
I have just kind of one relating to this. 20% was Brazilian traffic coming in, you said, for the January?
For the previous Florida Cup in 2020, about a quarter was international overall, but a significant portion would be from Brazil. It did coincide with their peak season in January.
I guess what I'm thinking, if it's roughly 20%, isn't roughly 20% pre-COVID is what we see going into the airport compared to domestic? Just on
Passenger
average?
traffic at the airport?
Yeah, do we have a statistic on that?
I have them. It is roughly 15 to 20% is in a pre-COVID, say 2019, the overall passenger volume would have been roughly 80-20 domestic international.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. Hearing no other questions, now we can get a vote. Motion to approve or no motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay. In a second?
Yeah, I'll second that, but with the
Discussion.
contingent of the teams by the end of April.
Okay. Motion's been made in the second with an amendment, I'd imagine, that the deadline be by April for the teams to be known. And if they don't get that by April, you're saying then there's no funding? Is that how the motion you want it to read?
Yes, if it doesn't fall within the top 12 and the top 20.
Okay. Are you saying by the end of April or a particular?
I think what I heard out there is that we will have a commitment by the end of April, yes.
Okay. Okay, so there's a motion on the table that we approve the presentation for 750, is it? 750, with the contingency that it be by April, the teams would be announced. Would they have to come back to us with the name of those teams? What I'm struggling with is what teams would make it positive and what teams would make it positive?
What teams qualify?
What would qualify for us to move
Top 12
forward
teams.
with the funding? Is there a specific,
I thought it was one in the top 12 and one in the top 20. I
Right,
think
that's
that's, Chris, what you're saying is ensuring the 750 goes to ensuring one of those teams is in the top 12, one in the top 20 by the end of April.
by the end?
That's
Is that,
correct.
am I interpreting it right?
And that's what we heard from Steve, yeah.
Okay, okay. Okay, You've heard the motion, and is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, motion's been made and second, that we would approve it with the contingency that the teams outlined in the top
12 and
12
then 20.
and 20
Yeah.
be announced by April, and it would come back to the committee. Is that correct?
I don't
Or
think it has
It would be
to.
funded.
does it have to come back to the committee? No,
So
they'd be
for
automatically
this
funded.
discussion, if we approve this then, and the teams are not in that level, funding is in May, so funding would not occur.
Correct,
Is
that's
that what you're saying?
what he said.
Correct.
Correct. Are we in the discussion mode? So
Aren't
we
there
have a
4
motion and a
teams? So are we saying one's top 12, one's top 20, and the other 2 are whatever?
I just, again, I'm a huge soccer fan. I would love to see this, and I think in any other year, it would be a different scenario. This is one of the highest asks for an individual event that I think if I'm reading what we have here properly.
40% of the budget.
Probably one of the riskiest years. And while the projections meet signature, the existing attendance and room blocks just don't. And so but I want to see it work, so I'm not really sure how to get there. You know, if we're at a 20% capacity, we won't get close to these numbers, and it's just all up in the air, even if these teams come, right? If we're at reduced capacity, we're just never going to meet these numbers. And 500,000 is still well, because I believe they said they would return 250. 500 is still well above what an average ask is for an average year for an event of this size. So those are just my concerns.
Okay, Steve, can you address?
No, I think it's very fair. I would just add that the Florida Blue Florida Classic is at 500,000, has been a fantastic event, certainly at this level. This is easily at that level, especially with the international and brand exposure. Kickoff games in the future will have to be at this level, and Pro Bowl was $3 million. And so, again, I'm respectful of, it's a lot of money, but I can't stress enough that I'm not sure we could have this conversation pre-pandemic, maybe even post-pandemic, because you're talking $2 million per match. So we'd owe each of these teams minimum $4 million just to get in the conversation. $8 million is not in the offing right the second, the kind of support we'd need from you to do that. But if we can enter this market now, while everybody's in disarray, it's our opportunity. I think we can meet the numbers. It's just more, I think we also have to be aware that COVID has created this opportunity for all of us to potentially get in the game for maybe 20 years. And we're risking it with you to make this work. And the value's going to be there. I'm just suggesting that 750 wouldn't cover I'm worried that a post-pandemic year, 750 is not going to be the number we need in order to get a yes out of a top 12 club in the world. So,
Are you looking for a multi-year deal with them? Like if they come if we pay them X number of dollars this year, they'll come next year, the next? Because
yeah,
they could just raise the price.
Some of them are asking for potentially the off year. So if you are here in 21, maybe come back in 23. We're having that discussion with them, knowing that we don't have any guarantees from you that there will be multi-year. But we're trying to get into this, and we're hoping that year one, COVID notwithstanding, that we can demonstrate the value of this for the community, and together we'll team up on a way to make year 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 happen. So that's the dream, but we got to start with this year, and that's what we're trying to do.
Steve, I have another question, actually. When Darryl was talking, so, in normal years, obviously, we would be more reliant on international travel. And from my old hotel days, I thought July was also a typical travel season for the Brazilian tourists guests, if I recall from working in hotels. I don't know if it still is, but my question to you is, will we put any marketing efforts trying to attract any percentage of the Brazilian tourism to come based upon who the teams are that are selected, or will there be no marketing efforts put towards that?
Oh my God, absolutely, yeah.
What would those be? How
Well,
would you
I mean,
reach?
right now, you have millions of social media
That's what I
followers.
figured. Yeah.
We'll clearly have linear broadcast partners. There's going to be a litany. There was $89 million of essentially earned and linear broadcast exposure already for the Florida Cup, largely in South America and Brazil. So those pipelines are going to not only be at that level, but they're going to be exponentially greater when you add a Euro to that mix of teams that are getting to play. So absolutely, we're focused on getting every last drop of visitation we could get out of that market. We're just acknowledging full well that COVID may
Right.
hamper that a little bit in '21.
Yeah, of course.
And I think it's an important distinction that in January, it was a big visitation month for Brazilians already. And,
Yeah.
and so this event, although as a driver in that month, some of them may well come to the, to the destination notwithstanding a soccer event, so. And they chose to come to the soccer event as well, so.
Okay, so we have a motion and second that we approve the funding for with the contingency that the teams be announced by April that meets the qualification criteria. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed?
I'm opposed. I'm sorry.
Okay. You want that for the record?
I think I have to, right? I
Oh,
don't know. Yeah,
Yes.
Sorry.
I imagine so.
Okay.
Okay, well, the ayes have it. Motion's been approved. Thank you. Great discussion. Great opportunity. Gold Cup.
Good luck.
Good afternoon,
Good afternoon.
Chairman Cowens and the committee, staff from Orange County, and of course, Visit Orlando. Pleasure to be with you this afternoon. A little bit of a last-minute opportunity for us on a opportunity that presented itself last July. Before I do that, if I could, Mr. Chairman, I'd love to share with you that in the packet that I presented before the start of the meeting today, some great news as we were awarded and announced this morning that we'll be hosting this summer the girls and boys Ohio basketball tournament. So good news, and I appreciate the support of this group. We were able to secure that event, and as coincidence may have it, we were able to announce it this morning. Also in that packet, a little bit of our report to the community is in there, as well as some press clippings from the most recent World Cup articles that have been written within the last couple of weeks. So to move along,
Thank you.
we were notified by the event organizer of CONCACAF Gold Cup that they were going to make a change in the formatting of the Gold Cup matches that would take place in the summer of 2021, which provides a new and larger opportunity for our destination. On slide over here, on February 17th, we were contacted. Of course, that fell well after the application period for this particular round of funding pitches, and contacted Visit Orlando to share with them that, and if I can read from the note that we received, the original game plan for Gold Cup was that approximately 16 to 18 venues in 16 to 18 cities across the United States would host preliminary, semifinal, and final matches for the Gold Cup. In lieu of the circumstances, the current pandemic circumstances, that is now going to change. And we'd like to revise our application and proposal to this group because now they will create bubble scenarios where the matches will take place, instead of over a 4 to 5 day period of time, those matches will take place over a 11 to 13 day period of time. They will reduce the number of cities down to as few as 6 cities. So of the 3 to 4 dozen destinations that were originally bidding on these matches, instead of 16 to 18, there'll only be 6 and potentially 8 at a maximum number of markets that will be awarded matches. We also, and I'm going to get to it here in a minute, I just want to give a brief overview of the event because this was a year ago, a little less than a year ago, that we presented to you all. Of course, this is SUM, which is the Soccer United marketing group that represents CONCACAF. On the next slides here, a little bit about what I just shared. The time frame, that window is matches on July 12, 16, and 20, to give you a frame of reference. As I said, 4 to 5 days, extending out to 11 to 12 days. And a little bit of the event history here, so you could see the results of the 2019 matches that were played across the United States. Of course, as I mentioned, the number of cities will be reduced. You can see everything on this slide. Of course, Mexico, we highlighted. Whenever Mexico was playing, those numbers were substantially more than when the other markets played. Marketing and media plan, social media reach, very good. And of course, Fox Sports and Univision are the partners for broadcast of this event. And here's a look back at the 2019 local organizing committees that work together to bring matches to their communities. A little bit on the hotel occupancy. We've certainly identified that this is an unusual year, as past projections and actually past performance. We expect to be a little bit different this summer with coming post-pandemic. And I wanted to also share that as was the Florida Cup, this would be a tremendous opportunity for us to once again have international soccer. These are not club teams. These are the national teams that would be coming into the marketplace as we bid and as we advance our cause to win World Cup matches here in 2026. So just a little bit of a frame of reference. And I do want to say that we're so appreciative of the the Florida Cup efforts. Ricardo and his team over the past number of years have done an exceptional job building their business, and that fits so significantly into our overall approach to World Cup. So just to add a new slide and share as we always evaluate when we receive and propose an application to the group, this does fit in 3 of the 4 categories. We believe being very conservative in the regular size commitment between a grant amount of 25 to 137, multi-day attendees between 5 and 50, room nights between 5 and 35. We do conservatively think that, and I'll share this with you here in a minute, I'm going to take a new approach to how we believe capacity will affect economic impact and affect the number of room nights so that you have some comfort with the new ask that we're making. As it relates to our goals when we do an event analysis, I think it does check all the boxes. I think that even in light of the pandemic, I think as we discuss, seasonality is not a concern right now. It does indeed, of course, generate media exposure both domestically and internationally. For sure, it fosters economic development. We believe the return on investment is $80 for every dollar that is invested by this committee, certainly to support our county's tourism industry and bring benefit to the enjoyment to the citizens of Orange County. And of course, as you might remember, so many of these clubs are our Latino community, are big fans of these country or the country teams that will be coming in to play these matches. And of course, as mentioned, returns a return on investment of TDT dollars. In fact, to the point that the newly collected TDT, along with sales tax that's generated by the event, just about covers the ask that we're making. So it puts those dollars right back into the till. On the last slide, and here's where I wanted to share just some our thoughts on the change from last year's projections in July. We're 3 months into the pandemic, as opposed to here now in March, seeing some light at the end of the tunnel potentially. We got even more conservative, frankly. Our original attendance projection for just the one day, the doubleheader matches, was 17.5 in totality. We had hoped at that time that that was going to represent, of a 25,000 seat venue, 75% of that venue. We have adjusted our projections for the 3 days of doubleheaders to a minimum of 25% capacity. We hope it'll be 50%, and we'll exceed these numbers that we put in front of you. But I want you to take comfort in the fact that even with the reduced projected attendance, although we feel it could be better than we're estimating, the large majority of the room nights associated with this event are generated by the event organizer, the clubs, the media that will travel, as well as the folks that will help put on the event. And of course, you multiply those 5 to 550 room nights over the course of 11 to 13 days now, as opposed to 4 to 5 days, and I think you can see how we believe that we can get to those room nights. This is void of any substantial fan activity around the games outside of our community. So our distant mix, we reduced substantially so that it would be as conservative as possible, knowing that we would probably see visitation to the event from the 30 to 60 mile radius around Orlando, although we are hopeful, and I'll share one story with you as a reference point. We are hopeful to certainly exceed that as we get into the summer. That said, we think that the economic impact projected, of course, with the longer stay will double, although we feel it could be even more than that. And the request that's been made of this committee is to, instead of in the past we had asked for $30,000, we're asking for a total of $60,000, $30,000 more. And I do want to share this really interesting note. And we'd spoken with Alan Johnson. We have a best practice committee meeting that we hold and we host, and we bring all the venue managers together. We've been doing this since the start of the pandemic, and everyone has an opportunity to kind of share best practices and protocols. And we have about anywhere from 25 to 40 of the event managers from around the community to come on the call. And Alan Johnson made a really interesting point in our call this week, was that during Monster Jam and during Motocross over the last 3 weeks, they were projecting from two things: looking at license plates in the parking lot, the zip code reports from the event itself, and the bartenders who were taking IDs to see if the individuals buying beer and cocktails were over 21, is that they estimated anywhere from 2.5 to 3.5 to 1 out of state visitation for those events. Folks that have not had the opportunity to go to events and participate, that we're seeing a wildly disproportionate number of folks coming from out of state to come to events here in Orlando. You know, obviously that's a specific event, but I did want to share that with you. I don't know how much relevance it'll have in this particular case, but a little bit of, help as we forecast and try to look forward. So I think that we're being extremely conservative in our projections relative to the opportunity. CONCACAF, as I've shared with you in the past, is one of the governing bodies that will have a say in our World Cup opportunity, and we think that this will be a wonderful event, regardless of whether we're at 25% capacity, hopefully by then in July at 50% capacity. And I'd love nothing more than to come with a post report saying that we've indeed far exceeded what these conservative estimates are. And I will hand it back to you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Questions from the committee? Just one question. The date is very close to the Florida Cup date.
Yes.
Do you see that as being a problem as far as overkill?
I don't. The community has such a great appetite for this type of, for these types of events. And the reason is you have that national pride. So the folks that are coming and represent or interested in either potentially following that particular country, because these are the national teams as opposed to club teams, and the club teams are certainly going to have massive star power. I don't want to even, I mean, Steve can do that all justice, and Ricardo, but at the same time, we do feel like our community, the ability for and the elasticity within our marketplace and the surrounding marketplaces, as was discussed earlier today, we do feel like we can more than handle the opportunities. And frankly, we expect, as we've shown, as we've promoted and shown y'all in prior meetings, there are many other opportunities that will present themselves, and I think that we will prove and be able to prove that we'll be able to sustain and exceed expectations.
Okay. Darrell?
just have a short review. As Jason said, this came before the committee last July, and at that time it was approved. You can see what was approved. It was 2 matches on one day, so it was a single-day doubleheader in July, and 30,000 was approved. So the new ask today is that it has been extended to a 3-day event with a total of 6 matches, and the request is for an additional 30,000. As was acknowledged, this potentially creates quite a month of July for soccer fans, which great exposure for the destination, and also perhaps bodes well as Orlando continues to position ourselves for potential World Cup host status coming up in 2026. A little bit of history. This was presented before the committee July of last year, but I know we have a couple new committee members. So this event is held every other year. So 2017, there was an event in Tampa that drew over 20,000. In 2019, the group stage spread across 12 locations, averaged almost 30,000. Now that's a little skewed because of Mexico, and as Jason alluded to in his comments, Mexico draws dramatic. You put the Mexican national team in Southern California, and they're going to pack out a football stadium. So if you look at the median, you're still over 20,000. So traditionally, this has drawn very good crowds. We understand, given the coronavirus situation, we can't project that for this year, and so Jason has taken the more conservative approach at a 25% capacity. As far as broadcast coverage, it is covered, at least it was in 2019. It was covered by Univision and Unimas on Spanish language, and then the final, which ended up being between the U.S. and Mexico, was broadcast on Fox Sports, or FS1, and in fact turned out to be the most watched men's soccer match of 2019 across any network. So there is definitely interest, and there is broadcast coverage that does lend some value for Orlando being a host destination, or a host city, excuse me. So just to quickly run through the wrap-up. Attendance and room nights do meet the criteria for a regular category event. Economic impact is a little short, and Jason alluded to the approach he took on calculating that. The broadcast coverage and how it complements Orlando's World Cup attempt. The concern, again, back to similar to the Florida Cup, is the coronavirus continues to have an impact on gatherings. While by July we're cautiously optimistic things will be on the upswing, really can't tell now what might still be in place as far as any kind of travel restrictions or quarantine requirements. So happy to take any questions you may have.
Questions for Darrell? Thank you, sir. Very good. Okay, so you've heard the presentation on the Gold Cup and the update to increase the amount to 30,000, to 60,000, increasing it by 30,000. Is there a motion to that effect?
Motion approved.
Been a motion to approve. There's a second.
Second.
There's a motion and a second to approve the increase for the Gold Cup. Well, let's not call it an increase, just say $60,000 allocation to the Gold Cup for 2021. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
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 Any opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Congratulations. Thank you. Okay, is there any old business to come to the committee? Rachel, any old business or anything from the committee? Any new business? Any committee member? Well, thank you so much, committee members. A great job today. Good meeting. Appreciate your time. No more old business or new business, then I would declare the meeting adjourned at 2:24 p.m.